Hi, everyone. In what is easily the most humbling opportunity to sit down with two guests today, my soul is on another level of fulfillment, but more importantly, just the humility that's radiating through New York all the way to San Diego. I'm beyond humbled to introduce the one and only Dr. Edith Eger and her wonderful grandson, Jordan Engel. How are you both today?
We are great.
Thank you. Happy to be with you. And I'm ready for questions.
So, Dr. Eger, her work is so special. The international bestseller, The Choice, also a New York Times bestseller. Her work has been featured all over the world and is rightfully the protege to Viktor Frankl. Dr. Eger, I'd like to start by asking you, and having personally read your book, The Choice, multiple times, the sentiment that hits home the most for me is that all your ecstasy must come from within. Can you please share with the audience where this sentiment came from and how it impacted your life?
Well, this is wonderful that maybe it's important to say that dependency can breed depression, because when you depend on someone to make you happy and you tell somebody, I can't live without you, I think that's not really very healthy. I like the WHOLE, a whole person, that you have a brilliant mind and a very warm, beautiful heart, and the two works together. I know that when I look at someone's eyes, right away I know who I am talking to. And try to smile with your eyes, and I think you're doing that with me, so I feel very honored.
Edie, the story about you learning to find your ecstasy from the inside
Yes.
when you were a dancer in Hungary.
Yes.
Can you tell that story?
Well, I had a ballet master who actually brainwashed me in a most positive way that I'm special, I'm one of a kind, and happiness doesn't come from the outside. And that is what I discovered in Auschwitz. Nothing was outside. 4 o'clock in the morning, we didn't know where we're going to end up with dead bodies, taking the teeth out, and this kind of work was not ever in my mind. So I think the survivor's personality is very, very different from the victim's personality. When you're a victim, you're always going to find the victimizer. But most of the time, the concentration camp is in our own minds, and the key is in your pocket.
And that ballet teacher,
Yes.
I remember he said to you, you are the type of person that will find the ecstasy on the inside.
Inside, yes. Yes, that he gave me this beautiful value that I bring to the world to let people know how to empower each other with our differences. That you can be you and I can be myself, but together we're going to be stronger than me alone or you alone. So I'm very happy to be with my grandson. And the other grandma was a Quaker woman, and she did wonderful work with puppets, and very talented lady. And here I am, a clinical psychologist, and working very hard, and I will never ever retire. I don't believe in retirement.
Well, we could tell that based on how young you are. You seem to be aging in reverse, so I commend you on that.
Not
In
young
ter-
or foolish. If a man takes me out and wants to know how old I am, I'm probably going to ask him to take me home.
So I want to ask you next, when it comes to, I mean, what's incredible about your journey, beyond everything that you've survived, is that you made a choice later in your career to go pursue a professional career as a psychologist.
Yes.
I remember reading in your book about where your mind was at and how you weren't sure or secure in that decision. If people are facing a similar type of insecurity, how can they start to develop the confidence or the courage to make the same decisions that you did to pursue your dreams?
I think if you talk to yourself, you may say something like that. It's inconvenient, it's unexpected, it's unanticipated, and not but, and it's temporary, and I can survive it. So you become your own person who is going to take that part in you that's going to empower you, that no matter what happens, you're going to suffer and be stronger as a result.
Edie, when you were making your decision to go back to school,
Yes.
when you had your own reservations about it.
That's right. And my supervisor asked me, what will I do with my PhD? And by the time I'll be gonna be 50, and he was so kind. He was actually Hungarian, and he told me I'll be 50 anyway. And that is very, very true. The chronological age, we cannot stop. It's going, but your attitude and the way you look at that, I like to be not strong and weak. I want to be strong and wise.
Not strong and smart, but strong and wise, right? That's
right.
The little difference between being smart versus having wisdom.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to elaborate on the difference between wisdom and intelligence?
You know, Richard Burton did not perform Hamlet overnight. He would rehearse. And that's what I do. I ask myself when I want to say something, especially when I'm in my children's home and they're very much involved with each other with some kind of a discussion, I ask myself, is it important? And the second one, is it necessary? And if it is, I see how can I make it as short as possible and ask for what I want and ready to make a deal. And so I'm doing the rehearsing myself, with myself, the part of me that can negotiate and compromise.
And I know the other thing that you ask yourself is it kind, right?
And most of all, is it kind? Most of all, is it kind? If it's not kind, don't say it.
So wisdom, therefore, is something that you gain wisdom from the rehearsal, from practicing.
The way I practice, I put myself in someone else's shoes and see how I look at the same thing from a different perspective.
So the way that I personally discovered your work, I was listening to a podcast where Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks was being interviewed on Tim Ferriss, and he referenced your book. I immediately went to go purchase it, and I wish you could see how many different highlights and notes that I have as I run through it now. And one of the things that really stood out to me about that, because it's always funny how someone comes into your life in the least expected ways. And I'm very big on manifestation. I've been picturing this very moment for about 2.5 years since I read the book. And what I also appreciate about your work is that you are extremely uniquely qualified to educate people on trauma and how to heal. And one of the lessons that I learned from you is that nobody heals in a straight line. And I'd love to learn more about how your perspective, when people are going through something very sad and traumatic that has happened to them, how can they accept in their head that nobody heals in a straight line, and to remember it as they go through their healing journey?
As I said, the self-talk is so important, to tell myself, I don't like it, it's inconvenient, and it's temporary, and I can survive it. Get rid of the yes, but, say, just change the but to an and. Yes, and furthermore. So don't call me a shrink, call me a stretch.
When it comes to freedom of choice,
Yes.
how can people empower themselves to make better choices and recognize that they have the power over their own decisions?
Well, many people can do what I can do, but not the way I can do it. You know, I am one of a kind. If I leave this room, nobody can replace me. There is a value that's not narcissistic. You just say to yourself, I'm doing it my way, hopefully at not someone else's expense. And not only that, but I feel good afterwards. Whatever you do, I hope you feel good afterwards, rather than, oh, I should have done that, I could have, and I didn't. You know, that you don't get down on yourself. You say, I didn't like it, inconvenient, and it's temporary, and I can survive it.
I love that idea, Edie, that you just said about we do it uniquely.
Yes, one of a kind.
You could look, Jonathan, and say, how can I start a podcast? There's already people out there doing podcasts. What would I do different than everybody else? And Edie, you could have said, there's already books written by Holocaust survivors. Why do they need my book? And I could say, what am I going to do to help her tell her story? So many other people could help her tell her story. But ultimately, we are only ourselves, and we are unique. And so that uniqueness is the thing that we can believe in, that what we're going to do is going to be different from how anybody else would do it. And it's a motivating factor. It's a motivation to continue doing whatever work we're doing, even when it seems like somebody is more successful or has already done it ahead of us. Mm-hmm. Nobody's done it like us. And I think for everybody out there who's doing a job that you don't know what it is for, or you don't know whether or not to take the next step, if you understand intimately that you are unique and that nobody will replace you and nobody can replace you, it can help you just keep charging forward without having all the criticism and the self-doubt that can so quickly wrap you up and make you not go forward.
It's called an arrow. You pick an arrow that you follow. When I came to America, I came from Germany to New York. But when we were passing England, there was a big storm, and I could see the skipper took a turn. And yet, I noticed that we're not going to China, we're going, this was temporary, and then we go where we're supposed to be, from Germany to New York.
You know, this also, Jonathan said we don't heal in a straight line. He learned that from you. And I think it's the idea that you know where you want to get to, but you accept the reality that you won't get there directly. That you're going to go here, that'll take you to here, that'll take you to here. And it's like, if you imagine how a stock slowly moves up, it doesn't go in a straight line. It just slowly moves. So if you can just be on the rise,
the word is called
there.
Focus. What do you focus on? Focus on something that will be in alignment to get you closer to the goal.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what it was like to meet and to work with Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl. I was at the university in Texas, and someone handed me a book, Man's Search for Meaning. And that was 10 o'clock at night, and I ate it up by 2 o'clock in the morning. And I wrote an article about Viktor Frankl. And one day I got a letter from him in person. We're going to meet at the university in San Diego, at the International University. And that's what happened. He was my mentor and then my colleague.
What I love is how your work and his work complement one another. They work very well together.
Yes,
What I also
a man and I'm a woman, and so the man wants to figure things out in his head. The women want to feel in the heart, and we did very well together. And I like to use my head about maturity. You know, I do childlike things, but I'm not a child. You know, I can work and play and love, and I can experience the experience. And so I will never stop. It's like climbing the mountain. You know, you slip and you climb and slip and you climb, but never stop climbing.
Where does all your energy come from? How are you able to carry such weight and move like a planet the way you do with your wisdom at this stage in your career?
I relied in Auschwitz on my God, and that is the energy that kept me going, that tomorrow I will be liberated. Tomorrow I'm going to see my boyfriend who told me I have beautiful eyes and beautiful hair. And unfortunately, he died a day before liberation, so I never did get to see him. His name was Friedman, Eric Friedman, and unfortunately, he almost made it, but he didn't come home. He died.
So what keeps you motivated, Edie?
Young people, I think they are the most precious bunch. They don't take anything so seriously, and I love to be with teenagers. Don't underestimate them. They're much wiser than we were, you see. If a guy takes me out on a date and asks me how old I am, I'm going to ask him to take me home. I told you that. I'll tell it again to people. Don't ask me for numbers.
What do you, when you say that, you mean that don't try to understand me based on my age, or don't try to understand me based on one thing. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. That I'm not so simple, I'm complicated, and I can turn, hopefully, anything bad into an experience that I learn from. So don't call me shrink, call me stretch. That's where it comes from.
What is it that you hope young people take away from your message? If you had one or two things to share with an audience like mine that happens to range from 18 to 65, what would you want them to learn from what you have gone through?
When they want to do something, ask themselves, is it important? Is it necessary? And if the answer is yes, self-dialogue is extremely important. And usually your body talks to you, and the body never lies.
And that's a very important sentiment, that the body keeps the score. And I think that when I look back at your work and the lessons that I've extracted, something that really helped me in working with victims of domestic violence was understanding that I had to empathize, and that every single time I asked them questions about what happened to them, I was re-traumatizing them, not on purpose, but I had to ask questions in a way that extracted the information, but also helped them heal. When I look at what you've done and what you've been through, what motivated you to want to help victims of trauma specifically?
Hope. 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 I never lost my hope that no matter what happens, I'm going to make it, and I'm going to be stronger for it. I had my own little dialogue with myself to be able to go one day at a time. And here I am talking to you. I'm going to be 96 in September. September 29th is my birthday. So maybe you and I can celebrate, and if you're in San Diego, we'll meet each other hopefully, and I give you a big hug.
I hope so as well. And another thing that I will share with you what's so special about this moment, as I was telling Jordan before, is my first child, my daughter, was born about 5 days ago. And now to have the opportunity to speak to you, it's really a full circle moment. My grandparents survived the Holocaust, my daughter's born, and now I have the opportunity and privilege to speak to you. I'd love to learn more, and I'm sure the audience would, about your view on how important it is to learn from the past. Can you share with the audience maybe some insight on why it's important to learn from the past, why it's important to never forget?
I think it's important to engage in self-dialogue by asking yourself whether it's important, whether it is necessary. I think self-dialogue can really help you, it helped me to write a book. And so I think it's very important for you to have the body and the mind and the spirit work together at all times.
Edie, Jonathan was asking us about history.
Yes.
And you lived through one of the most terrible, dramatic periods of history, World War II as a whole, and the Holocaust in particular.
Yes.
And you saw what happened in Europe beforehand. You were old enough to be aware of what was happening, and then you lived in Europe a little bit afterwards, and you saw anti-Semitism, you saw war, you were categorized in a way based on only one quality, that you were Jewish. So all of those things have been witnessed by you, and not by Jonathan, not by me, not by most humans, especially right now. Very few people are alive who went through that. And what Jonathan was asking is, how important is it for us to remember what happened, so hopefully we keep it from happening again?
Well, while I'm alive, I'm going to talk as much as I can, wherever I'm asked, all over the world. I spoke to a lot of women still at the airports waiting to go to a place and from the Middle East. And I think it's just good to be active as possible to do good, because many people can do what you can do, but not the way you can do it. So I remember when I had, I went to a restaurant and I was walking on cobblestones, and the word is trigger, and that triggered the time when children were spitting at us walking through Germany, and I felt so sorry for the children that their mother taught them how to hate. So I do everything in my power to spread love, because love can conquer all.
Edie, one thing that you've always said is that you want to do everything in your power to make sure that what happened to you doesn't happen to future generations.
Exactly.
And I think that the work that you do,
Yes.
the books that you've written,
Yes.
and the podcasts that you're on, help to give those who have been victimized, who have survived trauma,
Yes.
a way to look at their trauma as a gift that has made them stronger, rather than a curse that has made them weaker.
Right.
And that way to reframe the way that you look at what happened to you
Exactly.
can empower you to not become a victimizer.
Yes.
And I think
Yesterday's victims can easily become today's victimizer, because part of the psyche will identify with the aggressor, and we call it the Stockholm syndrome.
or passing the buck, right? It just, this happened to me, now I'm going to do it to you.
That's right, yes, it happened to me and made me stronger and wiser, and it's not what happens, it's what you do with it.
And what you are doing to teach people that lesson is what Jonathan and I are trying to do with our work as the younger generations after the Holocaust.
As long as you don't say one thing and then do another. So let's say that the phone rings and quietly you tell your daddy, it's for you. And daddy quietly responds, tell him I'm not here. And next week daddy starts lecturing on lying. You think that child is going to listen to daddy? See, be careful before you say anything. That kid picks up everything.
Yeah, you got to live it. I think that's a powerful lesson.
And do it.
Yeah, you can't say it and then do something else.
Why don't you go to an orphanage and maybe one kid is at the corner somewhere alone, and you may want to say to that kid that you would like to take a walk with them, and something that child is getting your attention and not complaining. Orphanages are good places to go to if you want to see lonely children. I like to go to schools, and especially in a neighborhood when poor children go, and I can see how children discriminate against each other. They have their clique, and they don't want anyone else to join that clique, and that's not really very healthy to do.
Right. It is the beginning of what can happen when it gets worse and worse, and people get older and more violent. Jonathan, our next book that Edie is writing, which I'm helping her to write, is for young adults. And it's a book that Edie has been very passionate about. She's all of her life says, I want to write a book for young people, for teenagers. And so we're now doing that. And I think it's going to be a very, very powerful book. And we're hoping that it goes and gets used in the schools to help show people that what's happening to them is a choice about how they perceive it. Okay. And to try to help young people from taking the acts that have happened to them and passing it down and doing it to other people, and give them the alternative that you can become a survivor and not a victimizer.
What I think is beautiful about everything that you both just shared is, first off, the power of reframing. I think that it's very underestimated, that I firmly believe it is a superpower. But then on top of it, something that's resonated with me, and I'm glad you brought it up, is that experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. And that sentiment has governed a lot of my career, in understanding that regardless of what I've accomplished, it doesn't matter. It's what I take with those accomplishments and go pay it forward and make sure that other people are doing something that can benefit their world and make people around them better. So the underlying theme under that, and Jordan, I'm happy for you to answer this as well and take it, is that in order to change our feelings, we have to change our thoughts. How do we start to do that? What does that process look like?
Well, you take it out of your head, and then you take like a map, and then you put it down, write it down on a piece of paper, and read it back to you. Is this really what I want to say? And you really become your own critic and know whether what your head is telling you is your heart matches that, or your heart is feeling a different feeling. So I think women seem to look for the warm heart more than men do. And they want to understand things. The understand is so academic.
We have an online course, Edie and I, that we've done together, and we had a live call with the participants of the course, and Edie was recommending that these people start working on writing their own book, and it's something that you'll hear her say often, that start writing your own book. But when we started really breaking it down, what that does and what that did for you is it gets the story of your story out of your head and onto the pages. And the action of like you were saying, taking that mop through your head and starting to wring it out onto the pages, it then opens the space, and you have a clean floor in your mind to go out and add new things to it. And so this idea of writing your own story, yes, it might end up as a New York Times bestseller. It's possible. It also might just be a story that you have in a journal. But what it does do is it allows you to start processing your story, your past, and reframing it to become a powerful story that's yours.
For that little girl who was just born, will have it on her living room table.
You're going to make me want to cry. I just had my daughter. So something else that, along the lines of what we're just talking about, is that as survivors taught you, and as you learned in your own experience, that we should not live to avenge the past, but rather to enrich the present. Why is living in the present so important?
Because one thing you cannot do is change the past. You can maybe reframe it, but most people don't realize that the past is very important, because you're here, you made it. You know, it's easier to die than to live. It's easier to just give up, as many people did. And they ran into the barbed wire, and they were electrocuted. And one woman told me just recently that she was very happy that the father went, unfortunately, through the gate and was electrocuted, that she wasn't, she...
This was in the Holocaust.
That was in the Holocaust. People look at things as not what happens, but what you do with it. I think Auschwitz, to me, was the best education that one can get when everything is taken away from you and nothing comes from the outside. I know when I was interviewed by one of the survivors who now became a couple, and she was very, very just strange, not friendly at all. And my sister yelled at to me, "The spirit never dies, the spirit never dies." And it's true, my sister Magda, who died a couple of months ago, the spirit never dies. So I bring your spirit to you today, and I know that you're going to tell many, many people what happens when you interview Edie.
That's the goal. I have felt so much, just my body's rushing with feelings that I can't even put into words, and I'm pretty good with my words. You can ask my audience about that, and my wife. But what I want to say to you in the time that we have left here is thank you. Thank you for making an impact on all the people through your work, through your spirit, through your words, through your education, through your time, through your persistent perseverance to elevate the people around you and educate them on how they can take their own thoughts and their own feelings and start to empower themselves, because your message, your mission, put me on a path to start to serve people around me effectively, to start to put me in a position to be of value in a different kind of way, to see service as a privilege and understand that the platform that we have becomes a responsibility that we have to uphold to make sure that, yes, when I have the opportunity to interview the person I've been most excited to interview for 2.5 years, that we embrace that opportunity with grace. And everything that you have done over the course of your career, whether you knew it or not, impacted me in ways that I'm doing my best to put into words in the short time that we're sharing. But I'm sure you can see it through your grandson and the beautiful family that you've built out in San Diego. I'm sure you could see it through all the other podcasts and interviews that you've done. But I want you to know personally from me, Jonathan Cohen, that my world and my family's world and the people that have touched my life, the angels in my life, are better because of your work. And I will make sure that it's a mission that I give you the entire platform to continue to share your message, to put you in contact with anyone that I possibly can, to continue to put everyone on a mission to heal themselves and understand that trauma, like you said, is a gift. And this also is a choice. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask you questions today. I have one more question that I ask of all my guests, and now I'm going to ask it to you. If the future version of yourself from 10 years from now was to fly in and offer you some advice, assuming she's in that ideal spot, what do you think she would say to you in order to get there?
Just be yourself, whatever that is. Just be one of a kind, authentic. Just don't try to mimic anyone. God only made one of you. You're special, you're one of a kind. There'll never ever be another you.
Dr. Eger, I'm so grateful for your time today. Jordan, thank you for your time today. I'm very grateful. Please let everybody know where they can keep up with your journey.
I want to thank my grandson for being so active. He is truly my ambassador. He does everything in his power to let the students know what happens when you are able to change other people's lives. Nothing can be more exciting. And I want to thank you in public, my grandson, my precious, one of a kind, Jordanka.
Well, thank you, Edie. I am very grateful to be here. I was born...
And of course, he wouldn't be the same without the most loving wife and the little twin boys who run around and chase each other, and a happy family. And I am so glad. So now I have 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandsons. That's a miracle.
A miracle. Jordan, why don't you let everyone know where the audience can keep up with your journey?
So Edie and I have been working on a few different projects together, one of which is the book, which is coming out ideally middle of next year. And it should be a really, really powerful book for young adults. And we will definitely be in touch with you about that as it comes out and maybe come back on your podcast. We also
100%.
have, Edie and I created 2 courses together, one of which is on forgiveness. And it's a 1-hour course to work through forgiveness and Edie's perspective on forgiveness, which is very unique and a very different take on what forgiveness looks like in your life and how to come to terms with what might have happened and how to move forward in your life using forgiveness. And then we also created our masterclass together, which is a 10-module, it's a full experience for students, and we've had a couple thousand students already go through it, and it's called Unlocking Your Potential. And that course we're actually about to release a live version, which is going to have coaches, and it's going to be phenomenal starting in mid-September. So we have that going. So both of those, I'll get you the links, are accessible and available. And of course, there's Edie's 2 amazing books, The Choice, which is her life story and the most beautiful book I've ever read, and it just happens to be about my grandmother, which is a lucky bonus. And then, of course, The Gift, which came about after writing The Choice. We knew she had so much more to tell, and she had so many more stories and analysis as a psychologist. And so that's an amazing book. And I get to be in that book, which is a fun experience to be featured. And it's one of those books that can give you the tools that you need to change your life. So there's always a lot going on in the Edieverse, as I say. And we're happy to give you all the access to it, and hopefully some of your listeners can take the deep dive and go into the Edieverse with us.
I know they certainly will. Again, thank you both. This was such a privilege. I don't have words. I'm just so grateful. Thank you for your time.
Jonathan, thank you for having us.
You're a wonderful interviewer. You're very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, 100%. Keep doing it.
Thank you.